If you get nothing else out of this video, I want you to walk away from here trusting yourself as the expert of your own situation and trusting that you made the best decisions for the context. Hi, I'm Jess, and this channel is for autistic women who are rebuilding their lives after leaving a controlling and abusive relationship. In our first two videos, we went over why a toxic relationship makes you lose your voice or autonomy. We went over why a toxic or abusive relationship will make you shrink and feel small, lack of competence. For this last section, we're going to go over being trapped. Trapped is a really difficult word for people who have not experienced it to understand. Somebody on the outside might just look at a woman and say, "Why did you stay?" without realizing the context around it. If you don't see physical restraints, if you don't see outward signs of immediate danger, what if this partner has never even been physically violent? What if it's just controlling? How can somebody be trapped in a situation like that? To really understand that, we have to understand coercive control as intimate partner deskilling, or a process of removing your partner's choices by systematically limiting and suppressing the skills that give them the ability to make those choices in the first place. Now, losing these skills is not your fault. You're not giving up, you're not surrendering, you're not playing small, and you're not giving in. Actually, the behaviors that we make, the behaviors that we choose, are all based on our context. For the context of these controlling relationships, the behaviors that you engaged in are normal. It is a human response. It is not codependent. It is the absolutely most logical, normal, functional, and adaptive response that you could have had to being controlled, to being threatened, to being coerced in these kinds of relationships. If you get nothing else out of this video, I want you to walk away from here trusting yourself as the expert of your own situation and trusting that you made the best decisions for the context. Now, we can understand context as a triangle that has 3 points. One point is going to be the skills that we already possess. We can only choose to engage in skills that we know how to do. Another point is going to be the environment. When we do engage in these skills, what happens, right? Afterwards, what's going to happen? And the last point is going to be our motivation. What are we trying to get? So if we're trying to get something in particular, say we're hungry and we go and we make a sandwich, and the environment is set up so that we can make a sandwich and then we can eat a sandwich, then that behavior makes sense for the context. However, if the environment, say, only has moldy bread, would the behavior still make sense? We could be hungry, we could go make a sandwich, but then what were we left with? We're left with a sandwich that's made out of moldy bread. And that would be incredibly dysfunctional. So in that situation, if you were looking at it, you're like, well, I'm hungry and I know how to make a sandwich, but I'm not making a sandwich. If somebody was just looking at your refusal to make a sandwich in that situation without taking into consideration the context around it, they might say that you had learned helplessness. They might say that you were codependent. They might give you any number of labels to try to explain your lack of action because the context is missing. We have to zoom out enough to see the context around the behavior, the skills, the motivations, and the environment, because it's always going to make sense. So what are the skills that abusers tend to target to reduce in their victims through this coercive control, this intimate partner deskilling? Well, they actually always follow the same sort of pattern. It's always going to be these skills that make up personal power, personal advocacy, the ability to stand in your own strength, the ability to make change, the ability to say no. So it's going to be these personal agency type skills. And feeling trapped or isolated, which are very closely connected, is going to be this last section here, the relatedness. We're going to talk about using technology to connect, functioning in relationships, and navigating the community. As we go around this wheel, starting with identifying experiences, we're approaching skill domains that are broader and broader and broader and broader. So this is just knowing I like it, I don't like it, right? And then we go to communicating, and then we go to making changes in our immediate environment. And now we're getting to how do we connect and relate to others and the community at large. And these skills are the ones that are most often going to be responsible for the feeling of being trapped and the feeling of being isolated. Using technology to connect. This is going to be the ability to call somebody on the phone, to send a message. It's going to be connecting to friends, family, relatives. In a broader sense, it's also going to be connecting to resources in the community through technology. This could be access to the internet. This could be access to knowledge. This could be access to media, television, radio, those sorts of outside information. This can also be that two-way access to things like education, online work, those sorts of building communities and changing through using technology to connect. Now, this can be suppressed through somebody else controlling your phone, removing your phone, or having systems set up in place where you can't access the technology you needed. An example that I heard of was somebody's abuser actually took the computers and installed Linux and made it like this weird system, this reboot system where she couldn't even access the computer. Like she'd turn it on and couldn't even get started. And he'd say, well, it's right there. All you have to do is turn it on, but she couldn't use it. So placing barriers in place that keep people from being able to access that technology, able to access those broader connections. Installing passwords on things so that you don't have access to it, or installing very strict firewalls or kind of parental controls on it that instead of being used, appropriately to help keep the kids safe, are controlling what the victimized spouse, what you are able to do with the devices, limiting what media you're able to see, limiting which channels are allowed and aren't allowed, which you have access, or even just punishing the consumption of the wrong kind of media. If you listen to the wrong kind of podcast, then you have repercussions for that because it wasn't in line with what you were supposed to be doing. All of that's going to fall under using technology to connect. Next is going to be functioning in relationships. These are all going to be intertwined with each other. Functioning in relationships is going to be at its most basic, the ability to make and maintain meaningful, supportive relationships. Now, this is, the main relationship with the abuser. This is also relationships with family and friends and support groups and religious groups and the community at large. Those kinds of relationships that bring you strength, comfort, support, friendship, that keep you from being isolated. One of the first things that's going to start happening in a toxic, abusive, controlling relationship is that those relationships with other people are going to start shrinking and being diminished. You're going to start finding that you face consequences for spending too much time with your friends. You might receive the silent treatment or be stonewalled, or there might be some kind of retaliation. A lot of times physical isolation happens where all of a sudden you weren't planning on moving. You wanted to live close to family and friends, but situations happen. There might be an invented crisis, that's pretty common, where now you are whooshed away and living someplace else without access to all of your relationships and all of that support. And then the last is going to be navigating the community. Now, navigating the community means being able to get around in order to access resources. Whether those resources are community resources such as the store, whether it's access to help, whether it's access to healthcare, whether it's access to spiritual communities, being able to go to church, whether it's access to being able to meet up with your friends, but that navigation around the community. At its most extreme, it looks like you're not able to leave the house alone. You're not able to leave the house without it. But there's a lot of steps in between fully being able to navigate the community and that extreme. A lot of times children, especially young children, are weaponized to limit your ability to navigate around the community. because if nobody else is watching the children, well, if you go anywhere, you now have to take them with you. Or financial means could limit your ability to have another vehicle. There's a lot of families that only have one vehicle. And so if the husband's at work and the mom stays home, well, she's now without a vehicle and without the ability to navigate the community. Sometimes this is a financial necessity. Sometimes, again, it might be a contrived or invented or created crises in order to limit that ability to navigate. So successful navigation would look like, if it's a walk, it's going to look different no matter what the community looks like. If it's a walkable community, then it can be the ability to walk to where you need to go. If there's the infrastructure and the public transportation, it can mean the ability to access that and to use it, right? If it is a community that requires a vehicle, then that's what it's going to require. So navigating doesn't have to look any one particular way. It has to make sense for the context of whatever community you are actually living in, with whatever financial resources and means are actually available. One of the ways that this navigation can be severely limited is by creating fear in the victim, and not fear of the abuser, but fear of the community at large. Many victims will report feeling like it's unsafe out there. If you're told often enough that it's not going to be safe for you to travel alone, if somebody says, hey, why don't you just wait for me to get home and then I'll take you to the store, that way you're safer, or convinces you that it's not safe to leave after dark, or starts convincing you that you're not competent to drive, you're not competent to navigate the community. Start saying things like, maybe I should drive, I'm better at it. Those sorts of little jabs that over time can significantly reduce your confidence in your own ability to navigate the community, which eventually might make you stop driving. It might make you stop going out by yourself. And those are skills that once they've been diminished in the relationship, after you leave, they don't just come back on their own. It takes time. But the good news is, because they're skills, it's not a matter of codependency. It's not a matter of anything being broken inside you. They're just skills, and skills can be relearned, and skills can be reclaimed, and skills can be rebuilt. Often, women who are recovering from controlling, damaging relationships, especially autistic women, do better with a functional, practical, skills-based approach to reclaiming the parts of themselves that were suppressed and relearning those things, a skill-based resiliency. Therapies are processes that are behavioral, concrete, and practical rather than more abstract, skill-based recovery methods such as DBT or ACT. If you want to know more about using ACT yourself to support you in rebuilding your life after a toxic, abusive, or controlling relationship, especially as an autistic woman, click the next video here. I'll see you over there.